मेरा नाम है बुल्ला। कुंदन, कुंदन मेरा भाई, कुंदन, अरे ये सब क्या हुआ?
Thank you for that censorship in that one particular line. Thank you for the introduction, actually. All of it is absolutely untrue. I'm sure it's taken from Wikipedia. To cut a very long story short, what I do for a living is essentially try and sound very intelligent about very, very stupid things. To cut it even shorter, I'm a Bollywood film critic, which means I end up watching a lot of films and wondering why people love them or don't love them so much. And the first time that I tweeted that I was going to be at IIT-Kharagpur, the first reply that I got from someone was, "You're going to the fortress or the gud of this movie called Gunda." Apparently it's been watched through the day and night over many, many, many days in IIT Kharagpur and various other engineering campuses in India. It's hard to tell exactly what. It's hard to imagine exactly what happens in this film. It's a very, very bizarre movie, obviously. I don't need to tell you that. But the point being, it's a bunch of characters for whom sex is the only point of living. Rape is a national sport in this particular place. And there used to be, in the 90s at least, a whole lot of heroes that we had in our mainstream movies who were also stalkers, who were also molesters, and they eventually got the girl that they wanted. And I mean, what led to a film like that, or films like that in the 90s? I think there's one theory that actor Saurabh Shukla has about those movies, is that back in the day in the 90s, when Bollywood used to be an extremely unorganized sector, most of the funding used to come from very unorganized sources, one of them being the underworld. Now, if you're going to put in your money in some form or the other, your worldview will also show in those films. And somewhere it was reflecting those times. I'm not too sure whether that's true or not. That's just a theory. Because at the end of the day, any film is really going to be the director's medium. An actor can say those are the lines given to him or her. A technician, a cinematographer could say he shot a particular scene because he was told to do it a certain way. A writer could say that was the brief, that's why the film looks like a certain way. But the director is really naked before this medium. So clearly, what has happened on the screen in some form or the other reflects the director's viewpoint. So if it is really that, then in the 90s, when we used to have these, Anil Kapoor being a molester, but also the hero of a film, there was this man called Mithun Chakrabarti who used to have his own film industry that used to run from a town called Ooty, from a hotel called Monarch, and he would churn out a film after film, about 8-9 movies a year in the mid-90s. I guess you guys were kids back then. And they would all play to packed homes, in theaters very close to Kharagpur itself, I'm sure, but also in the Bihar-Bengal border. And of course, only one movie survives from that, and that is Gunda, because that's been turned viral by land networks in colleges. But if there was a point where, for instance, when they was doing so many films, if there was a point, it's a story being told, or so I've been told. So there is a point in one of his films, in Mithun's movies, where he comes in, and when he opens the door, when he's entering the house, he's actually wearing a red shirt. When he opens the door and gets in, he's wearing a yellow shirt. It's a usual continuity problem. And the producer calls up Mithun, by which time Mithun is working on his 10th movie after that, and says, "Boss, there's a problem. Could you please come? And could you please just shoot this one particular scene?" And Mithun turns around saying, "Boss, agar wo shirt red se yellow or yellow se red nahi hoega, to picture hit ho jayegi kya? How does it matter? Just release the movie." So is it really the director's medium also in that sense? It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, the reason why a lot of people go to watch films is, in some form or the other, the superstar, a persona that is created. For instance, someone, and how it gets created is another matter altogether. So someone like a Hrithik Roshan in mid-January 2000 did enter a theater called Gaiety Galaxy, a very popular barometer for box office success in Bombay and the rest of India also, because it's this 7 theater chain that you must check out if you're in my city. And he enters the theater at around, say, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock for the first day, first show. And by around 1 o'clock or 1 o'clock, he is a superstar. And he's not able to come out because people are tearing his clothes off. And, he's become Hrithik Roshan. So that is the power of the image, and that's what it can do to a particular actor or a star, as it turns out. So in that case, what is a star? And I think it's a very important question that a lot of people try to answer for themselves. And I think one of the things that make you a star, in the context of Indian cinema at least, is that you can sing and dance. When you see a Nawazuddin Siddiqui and why he's a great actor but not considered a star is because you don't see him singing and dancing. Of course, in Hollywood, there's another definition altogether, and Roger Ebert, my favorite film critic, had this. If you have a very big face, you automatically stand out from everyone else on a cinema screen. But so the moment you see somebody singing and dancing and you think in your head, that's a star. So in also a lot of people's heads, if there is no song in that film, it's not a movie at all. And which is what we've also traditionally grown up on. And I genuinely believe that if there were no songs in Hindi films throughout, they would have to work very strongly on scripts. One of the reasons why our scripts haven't been the finest in the world is because we have some great music, and our music has always been better than the movies, and people have usually been very satisfied with what they've come in to watch, the movie star, of course, and the songs that they got. But there are also other reasons why Indians tend to watch movies, and I think a major one is location. I'm sure you've heard people ask, कि boss वो किधर shoot किया है? वो उसको यूरोप अच्छा दिखाया है. Switzerland looks lovely in that movie, and this is a very bizarre way, but it was also a medium for tourism besides singing and dancing. The other one that is also equally important is catharsis. A lot of people love action films, and of course we can keep giving reasons. Like for instance, in the 70s it was considered like Amitabh Bachchan's movies were angry young man movies, but I think they were just watching action films. There's some catharsis on us as an audience when we see somebody beat the hell out of somebody that we personally can't, and hero becomes a projection of that. So I don't buy the angry young man a bit too much. Then there is obviously fashion. There is bodybuilding. I think one of the reasons why people have started building better bodies is because this whole revolution that started in the 70s and 80s in California, which has now hit the Hindi films. And so you have your John Abraham and your Salman Khan, and therefore you have also their fans doing exactly the same thing. So I think in the process, what happens is that this is really the impact that a film makes. But sometimes or the other, it is governments or societies that tend to overemphasize the impact that cinema has on us. And that's where censorship comes in. So you already have those many problems in terms of reaching out to audiences who may or may not even want a story from a film. Then there is the other problem where you're trying to do something which is slightly pushing the envelope in terms of art, and there'll be somebody or the other who will have a problem. So there is money being pumped into making that movie, and you will not do it. So one is, of course, the censorship itself, which is a censor board body, which is essentially 4 or 5 people watching one film. 2 people cannot agree on what they think about a movie. 4 people will not be able to do it. And therefore, there are certain subjects that you will not touch, for instance. So the reason why we perhaps don't make political films is because it will irk someone or the other, and it'll certainly irk the government of the day. And so we're left with a certain size of films or a certain type of films that will hopefully not offend anybody's sensibilities. And that, I think, is, of course, by now you know I'm discussing why we make bad films, because we love watching bad films to start with. So between all of these, is it really possible to make a great movie? Does it ever happen? And here's the trick. It happens only because of an inflection point. Something big happens that nobody ever expected. So there is an audience that is essentially looking for location, looking for fashion, looking for a hero, looking for a song. But say in 1998, the same year as Gunda, they could watch a film like this.
खांडीलकर को कल्टी दिया, अमोल शुक्ला गया, गुरुनानंद तो भी ऊपर, इधर भाव कलेक्शन जिताया कौन? भीकू मात्रे। मुंबई का किंग कौन? भीकू मात्रे। कोई है क्या रे? ए, इधर मुंबई में कोई है क्या?
Only by trial error or the times that we were in, the fact that, the economy had opened up, the fact that you had multiplexes, malls, there was middle-class audiences that had stopped going to the theater. They wanted something more realistic. So when you have a film like this that comes in, that is, well, also funded by a diamond merchant, that was Bharat Shah who made this movie, but directed, of course, by Ram Gopal Verma. Nobody knew who these stars were. They're not the greatest looking human beings. The screen itself doesn't look that great. The location is Bombay in its most realistic portrayal. So clearly, this is not a movie that should ever appeal to the vast masses, but it does. And it probably does 10 times the business that they would have thought that it would. And what it does, what it ends up doing, a film like this, or any film which is that turning point film, or a tipping point film, or an inflection point film, is that it makes sure that there are at least 10 movies that get made on a similar line. So I think what Sitha did really for Bollywood in that sense, given the context that we were coming from, is introduce a whole new set of talent so far as actors were concerned. Thereafter, Ram Gopal Verma, of course, he started his factory, introduced a whole lot of talent in terms of writers. It brought in a whole lot of talent in terms of technicians. And so what we see then is a certain movement towards a film that can actually be considered not just great because it's an Indian movie, but a film that's great because it can be loved by audiences outside the ones who are already used to a certain kind of cinema. And I think that is important not so much in any other media in India, the acceptance from the public, because this is the only one where you pay from your pocket to watch a film. Now, if the audience tastes get upgraded, the films get upgraded on their own. And audience tastes are getting, of course, much upgraded now thanks to torrent, thanks to internet, thanks to movies that we have better access to, and therefore we see better films being made in the first place. But like say if you take a newspaper, for instance, the price that you pay to watch to read a newspaper is about 1/10 the price in which it is actually produced. Likewise, on television, we don't pay for anything. It is led by advertiser support. On internet, it is also led by advertiser support. But in a film, you have to make the decision to get out of your comfort zone, to go into a theater, to buy a ticket, which will fund that film, and to like it or not like it. And I think from Gunda to, Gunda being, of course, which is no knock on Gunda. It's 8.9 on IMDb meter. Gandhi, incidentally, is 8.1. So clearly there's something great happening there. But from the 90s to where we are now, we're reaching a more structured way of actually finding movies that go viral in a real sense. So I'm going to leave you with a clip of another film because nobody knows exactly what will work, what won't. So I have absolutely no clue why Gunda worked. I have absolutely no clue why a film like Jani Bidiyaro, when it released in 1983, was known to no one, but has been watched by practically every film buff in India. So I'm going to leave you the clip because I think that between Kanti Shah's Gunda and Kundan Shah's Jani Bidiyaro lies the entire spectrum of Hindi cinema.
मेरा जैसा जी चाहेगा उसका वैसा ही उपयोग करूंगा मेरा जैसा जी चाहेगा उसका वैसा ही उपयोग करूंगा भीम
ठहर पापी मैं तेरी जुबान खींच के लूंगा शांत खराधारी भीम शांत.
So, well, sometimes you get the option now, especially to watch these films on internet, even if people missed it in the theater. But by and large, like it works with all mass cultures, we are only as good as our politicians. We're only as good as our movies. We deserve the movies we get. And sometimes they're great, as we've seen. And sometimes they're not, they're terrible, but we love them nonetheless. So thank you, IIT Kharagpur, for introducing Gunda to the world.